And we are live. Good morning, good morning. Happy Thursday. This is the Get Your News On With Ron Friday. Because, you know, that's how we roll here. We don't do a Friday stream. That is when the podcast comes out, though. Took us a second to get live there. We got a lot to talk about today. Hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone has a big weekend planned. I actually don't. I admittedly do not have a very big weekend planned at all. Oh, my screen is moving slow today. What's up, Rin? How are you? Good morrow. So where are you at? Where are you based out of? Is it really late where you are? Where I'm at, it is morning. And I don't know if we're loading slow or what, but there is only one person in the chat, and it's showing that 0 people are watching. I don't know what that's all about, but that's weird. I feel like something must be afoot. Either the stream is not going well. Here, let me see what it... Well, it looks like it's fresh over on this end. Fresh, that's a weird way to put it, huh? But Rin, so far, you're it. And that's not... Yeah, something's up. So it's telling me only one person is watching this. And that is... Okay, it's moving up a little bit. I think the stream is lagging. Something's up. And that's okay. We'll be patient with it. What's up, Victoria? How are you? Thanks for being here. I guess folks are starting to load in. Maybe people just got a slow start this morning. I don't know. I guess it's possible. But I feel like something might be afoot a little bit. Something might be afoot. And that's okay. We'll plow through it. What's up, Prybite? Good to see you. This is early for me. Me too. I slept in this morning. I was really tired. I was really tired because I actually... I'll tell you a little bit about me. I had an upset stomach yesterday. I woke up about 5 in the morning, and my stomach was upset because of some buffalo cauliflower I ate in the evening. So I kind of had to deal with that, which was not fun. That was not fun. What's up, Dana? How are you? Good to see you. Howdy, howdy. What's up, Anna? How are you? Good to see you. All right, we're up to 10. According to my calculations, things are going... Yeah, this is... I wonder if maybe one of the articles is taking a lot of time or taking up a lot of bandwidth and slowing things down. That's possible. Well, I'll give this a few more minutes and then I'll just get going. Because things are loading really slowly for me in the chat. I'm having trouble scrolling. What's up, Frederick? Hi, how are you? What's up, Prob Menendez? Good to see you. I hope everyone's having a good day. We'll begin here in a few minutes. I got my coffee and my mason jug full of water, per usual. That's how I roll pretty much all the time. All right, so it's saying 18. What's up, Susan? How are you? Good to see you. What's up, Joshua? Good to see you. Good morning. Cheers. I know where you're at. It's morning, so I hope you're having your morning coffee. I am having mine. The chat box wasn't there at first. Okay, so that's what's going on. The chat box is being a little goofy. What's up, Daniel? Good to see ya. Ciao, David. Come stai oggi? Sei stanchi? Sono stanco. Ho bisogno molto lavoro oggi. Frederick, Trump took his ball and went home. What are you referring to? Did he resign? That would be funny if that was like a breaking thing that we just found out on this stream one day. Like, holy shit, he... Schultzy, howdy, howdy. Yeah, the chat box is being weird. The stream in general is being a little weird. So we're all getting in slow but sure. But yeah, things are being weird this morning. I don't know why, but, you know, whatever. We'll roll with it. We can start a little early. Oh, Frederick, North Korea talks have ended. That's what Frederick was referring to when he said that Trump took his ball and went home. What's up, Shannon? Prab Menendez has a question for me. Ron, there needs to be involvement of younger generations for change to take place in this country. Don't you agree? Yes, I do. Very much so. Of course I do. I think that the young people need to be active. I think they are, which is awesome to see. And I think that's a good thing. So, yeah, of course I agree with that. And I'm also, I favor lowering the voting age to 16. Especially if you saw that Dianne Feinstein video, that should motivate you. Once again, when she shamed those kids because they didn't vote for her because they're not old enough. If you saw that video. Yeah, I favor lowering the voting age to 16. I think if somebody can get behind a car and operate a vehicle, they should be able to cast a ballot if they want to. Chris, Ron, did you see Kyle's video, Secular Talks video, on corporations wanting total access to your phone? I have not. But I'll have to check that out. Guys, we are above 30. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron. Thank you for your patience today. Things were loading a little weird. And, yeah, I don't know what that's all about. But we're here now. Happy Thursday. It's our last stream of the week. Because that's how we roll here. You guys are awesome. Thanks for being here. We got a lot to talk about. You guys have sent a lot of stuff in. We're not going to get to everything. And that's okay. We'll get to as much as we can. And we're going to start with something that is breaking. So this is breaking news. I just started to unpack this myself, so we'll unpack it together. Netanyahu over in Israel is going to be indicted on corruption charges pending a hearing. And this is pretty much breaking. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be charged with bribery, fraud, and breach of trust arising from 3 separate corruption investigations pending a hearing, according to a source with direct knowledge of the decision by Israel's Attorney General. So he's accused of taking bribes from a number of people, one of them being a Hollywood actor, I believe. And they've been investigating this. Attorney General Avishai Mandelblat's intention to indict the Prime Minister so close to April's general election marks a dramatic moment in Israeli politics and a major blow to Netanyahu as he seeks a 5th term in office. Netanyahu's opponents will likely look to exploit a heightened sense of damage to the Prime Minister's reputation. While his coalition partners must now decide whether to support a leader who looks set to be indicted or withdraw their support and risk alienating their shared right-wing voter base. Netanyahu is entitled to a hearing on the impending indictment before charges are formally laid, but that is not expected to take place until long after the election. So, under Israeli law, Netanyahu is not required to step down if he is indicted. He is only required to step down if he is convicted, and that conviction is upheld through the appeals process, which could take years. So basically, and of course he says that he's not doing any wrongdoing, and this is just speculation in the Israeli news media, according to him. So basically, he's not going to be required to step down. It looks like there's a good chance they're going to indict him. And he's being accused of taking multiple bribes from various figures, which, of course, just skims the surface of the corruption that somebody like him participates in. Same with the corruption that Donald Trump participates in. Same with the corruption that many of the world leaders participate in. So we'll see what happens here. I mean, if he does get indicted, I have a feeling he would run for re-election anyway, if I had to take a guess. And we'll see how damaging it is. I mean, right now, this is just breaking news. This was breaking this morning that it looks like he's going to be indicted. Yeah, like the hearings are reaching their end. He can appeal it and get another hearing, but that would take a while. It'd be after the election, and the election takes place in April. So it's coming up. So this is about 6-ish weeks prior. I believe April 9th is their election. So this is 6 weeks prior to their election. This happened to them. So right now, we'll just continue watching this as it unfolds. But that is some breaking news as of this morning. And you heard it here first on Get Your News On with Ron. Netanyahu, what's going to happen? We'll keep an eye on it. So, we got some good news. We got some bad news. So, we'll go to bad news first. We'll end with good news. But first, I want to go here. So, the House, along with Representative Pramila Jayapal, have a new Medicare for All bill. So, what's going on here, and how does this article unpack it? All right, so Representative Jayapal is introducing the most ambitious Medicare for All plan yet, one that envisions a quick transition to a public health plan with a robust set of benefits. The co-chair of the Progressive Caucus is releasing a proposal Wednesday to transition the United States to a single-payer healthcare system, one in which a single government-run health plan provides insurance coverage to all Americans. We mean a complete transformation of our healthcare system, and we mean a system where there are no private insurance companies that provide these core benefits. We mean universal care, everybody in, nobody out. Jayapal's bill envisions a future where all Americans have health coverage and pay nothing out of pocket when they visit a doctor or hospital. Her plan, the Medicare for All Act of 2019, describes a benefit package that is more generous than what other single-payer countries like England or Canada currently offer. The benefits in Jayapal's bill are even more generous than those included in Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan. But where the Jayapal plan has great detail into what is covered, it does not get into a crucial question: how the government will pay for the new healthcare program. They always mention that real quick, don't they? They love to mention that. And we'll go through this article, and you'll see there's a lot of kind of like status quo favored language going on in it. But what no one loves to point out in any media piece, I'm not even singling this one out, the corporate media, whenever they point out how are we going to pay for this, how can we afford this, they never point out the glaring truth that we already spend more on of our GDP on healthcare than any other country. We spend the most on healthcare already, by far. Like by far, like no one even comes close to us, and it's because our system's so fucked up. So we're already spending the money. That's just it. We're already spending it. And what we could do is have a reallocation of resources so that not only do we spend less of it, but we spend it more wisely, and human beings are not excluded. We have the type of system most of the rest of the all of the industrialized world and most of the world takes for granted. We have that in the United States, the richest country in the world. That's what a Medicare for All plan does. But people always talk about, well, how are you going to pay for it? Instead of, hey, how are we going to reallocate these resources? You know, if you're overpaying for a car and you want to keep that car, the question you ask is not, how am I going to afford this car? The question is, how can I better reallocate my resources to spend more wisely for this car? It turns out I took some predatory loan where I'm overpaying by about 300% on my car payment. How can I refinance so that my car payment is reasonable and what I should be paying? Not, oh, how am I going to afford this car? But that's what when it comes to healthcare, for some reason, we throw logic out the window immediately and go to how are we going to pay for it when we're already paying more than all the other countries. Isn't that interesting? All right, so let's continue. The new proposal comes at a moment that Democrats are coalescing around the Medicare for All platform. Frontrunner candidates in the Democratic primary, like Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Elizabeth Warren, have all signed on as co-sponsors to Sanders' single-payer plan in the Senate. The healthcare industry has already begun a gird for a major healthcare fight should a Democrat win in 2020, recently launching a new coalition of hospitals, insurers, and drug makers to oppose the Medicare for All agenda. That's an interesting thing to note. It's also worth noting that there are many doctors, many nurses, many medical practitioners that are for a single-payer system. I'm sure some aren't too. I mean, of course, but a lot are. In fact, in California, where I live, our single-payer bill, you know who was pushing for it? A nurses association. The Nurses Association was pushing for a single-payer bill. And when they were protesting for it to get its fair shake, because it was shelved by an insider, by a corrupt politician named Anthony Rendon, when it was shelved and stabbed in the back, and they protested it, they were told to shut the fuck up and get out of the room at the convention. Literally, like I'm saying this verbatim, like I'm quoting, they were told to shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up and get out. That's why our system's broken, by the way. But anyway, getting back to this. So J-Appel's Medicare for All plan has a very generous benefit package and a quick transition to government-run healthcare. J-Appel, first of all, it's not government-run healthcare. So right there, that's something that's a little bit dishonest in this article. It's just government-orchestrated healthcare. The healthcare is still run by the hospitals and the doctors. It's not like the government is deciding what care you do and don't need. They're just the bookkeepers. All right, J-Appel's single-payer proposal would create a universal Medicare program that covers all American residents in one government-overseen health plan. It would bar employers from offering separate plans that compete with this new government-run. All right, yeah, they're just going to keep saying it. We get it. It would, however, allow two existing health plans to continue to operate as they do now, the Veterans Affairs Health System and the Indian Health Services. Those who do qualify for the new Medicare plan would transition into the program over the course of 2 years. This would start with people under 19 and over 15, moving into the program 1 year, and everyone else a year after that. It's worth noting, and I guess by they mean those who do qualify, they mean everybody else unless you're in one of these two things. If you're in one of these two programs, you can stay, Veteran Affairs or Indian Health Services. If you're in anything else, you go into this plan. It's worth noting that this is actually a faster transition than what Senator Sanders envisions in his proposal. Eventually, everyone would end up in the same plan. J-Appel's plan also includes coverage for long-term services and nursing services. Long-term care services for nursing services. The current Medicare program does not include this benefit, nor does Sanders' plan. This will make the healthcare system she envisions more generous, but also more expensive. The plan is significantly more generous than the single-payer plans run by America's peer country. The Canadian healthcare system does not cover vision or dental. Okay, the Netherlands has a similar set of benefits, as does Australia. What's more, the J-Appel plan does not require consumers to pay any out-of-pocket spending on health aside from prescription drugs. This means no charge when you go to the doctor, no co-payments when you visit the emergency room. All those services would be covered. This too is not. There was a part of this article I want to get to. This too is not in line with international single-payer systems, which often require some payment for those seeking services. Taiwan's single-payer system charges patients. In Australia, people pay 15% of their costs when they visit a specialty doctor. So there's a part of this article that I'm not finding now where they talk about how this is because they just pointed out two countries. What they didn't tell you, in France, in most cases, you do not pay a dime out of pocket. And in the cases that you do, it's something very negligible. So there's one system that they're saying, oh, this is different than the other single-payer systems. Here's two for instances. Well, okay, France. You barely pay anything out of pocket in France, if ever. And they have the best healthcare system in the world. What I find a little bit worth critique of this article is that they're saying it, they're kind of implying that this is so much more ambitious than most single payer plans out there. I do not believe it is. I think it's reasonable, first of all, and second of all, shouldn't we want to have the best plan? I mean, there's so many, for instances, where the United States is always trying to be the best. Why don't they write an article about this regarding our military spending? Why don't they write an article saying, hey, we spend more than the next 13 countries combined? Hey, we spend more on our military than pretty much everybody. We dwarf every other country when it comes to military spending. Why don't they write an article like that? Why don't they say something like, hey, because we already spend more than twice as much as every other country, it would make sense we would want to have the best plan. Even if our system would be more generous than every other system out there, and again, based on this article, I don't think that means for sure that it is by any stretch. I mean, they listed a small handful of countries. They didn't bother mentioning just a basic Google search, which I did right before the show, shows you, in most cases, France, they pay zero out of pocket. And when they do, it's like maybe 30%. And it's not for anything serious. It's for something negligible. If it's a big thing, they don't pay a dime. They get reimbursed by the government. They have the best healthcare system in the world. If you're doing research on this topic, wouldn't you start with the #1 rated system and see what they do? And a basic Google search would tell you they usually don't pay anything out of pocket. Meanwhile, this article is pretending like, oh, basically every system we know. And here, let me try to find that part in the article. All right, I'm not finding it. Yeah, I'm not finding it. So let's see what else there is to this. Financing the health system that both JPL envisions is an immense challenge. About half of the countries that attempt to build single-payer systems fail. I would be curious to see this statistic. I'd be very curious to see this statistic. That's Harvard Health's economist William Haslow's estimate after working with about 10 governments in the past 2 decades. Whether he is in Taiwan, Cyprus, or Vermont. Okay, Vermont's not a country. Vermont's a state. The process is roughly the same. Meet with legislators, draw up a plan, write legislation. Only half those bills actually become law. The part where it collapses inevitably when the country has to pay for it. Okay, so that doesn't mean single payer is a failed system. That means this particular person has written up bills that haven't been passed for whatever reason. So this entire paragraph is completely misleading and does not. Their thesis, about half the countries that attempt to build single-payer systems fail. What are they basing it off of? This one person who worked with a handful of governments and only got half the bills to become law. In this case, which, by the way, they mentioned 2 countries and 1 state. So they say half the countries, and then they mention a state. So this entire paragraph is bullshit. This entire paragraph shouldn't even be in this article. It is just a subtle way to shit on the idea of single-payer healthcare. This is what happens when Sanders, Vermont, attempted to create a single-payer plan in 2014. Much like JPL, local legislators outlined a clear vision of the type of health plan they'd want to extend to all Vermonters. Their plan was arguably less ambitious. It did require copays, but Vermont's single-payer dream fell apart when the state figured out how much it would need to raise taxes to finance its new system. Vermont abandoned the government-run plan after finding it would need to increase payroll taxes by 11.5% and income tax by 9%. So what they don't mention here is another state, the state I live in, California, when we found out that implementing our single-payer system would save us money. we find out that we'd be paying less of our GDP if we had a single-payer system. And the bill was stabbed in the back and shelved anyway by Anthony Rendon, who had the authority to do that. And why did he do that? Because he gets paid off by the insurance industries. It's interesting they point to Vermont, you know, when this, and I'm not crazy fluent in Vermont situation, but yeah, it looks like they didn't dot all their I's and cross all their T's in this one, for instance. Whereas, by the way, if you're going to be like, well, look at Vermont, that's Bernie's state, and this could, okay, Medicare for All, Bernie already lays out how we're going to pay for it, and study after study after study, even a study funded by the Koch brothers, indicated that it saves us money. Medicare for All saves the American people money. All right, so single-payer systems change who pays for healthcare, often shifting more of the burden onto wealthier individuals to create a more progressive system. The proposed 9% income tax in Vermont, for example, would be far more expensive for the $100,000 worker than the $30,000 earner. A single-payer system is based on income, but who pays how much more is the key question this JAPL bill doesn't answer until there is, and it's typical for bills at this stage to not have all those questions answered, by the way. That's very typical. And what this article does not point out, first of all, it does not point out that many single-payer systems, there are not out-of-pocket costs, first of all. It does not point out that we're already spending more than every other industrialized country on healthcare. We spend more than every other country. So when we get a single-payer plan, it should be the best and the most generous. It should be. So even if all the claims they're making to imply that this plan is unrealistic, which it isn't unrealistic, it's just the type of healthcare plan the industrialized world takes for granted that we don't have because of a corrupt insurance industry that shouldn't exist. Even if it was that much better than every other country's plan, why wouldn't we celebrate that? You always hear USA #1, we're #1, except when it comes to helping people. If this plan is so much better, then shouldn't that be the plan we go for? Shouldn't we want to have the best healthcare in the world, especially since we've been paying the price to have that for years and years and years? We spend more than everybody. We spend more on healthcare than everybody. And we get less. So if we pass the best single-payer plan there's ever been, we deserve it. Quite frankly. So what a weird, obviously this article is subtly trying to dismiss the idea of single payer, and they do so in a very intellectually lazy way. They highlight just a small handful of countries. They highlight one person's experience to back up the thesis that single payer fails. They mention Vermont. They don't mention California, which was a more recent, for instance. And I can't find that one. All right. Well, let's move on. Here is a Tulsi Gabbard article. Democratic Rep. Tulsi Gabbard advises Koch-funded university center. The center's director has ties to neo-Confederate figures. A Democratic presidential candidate is an advisor to an academic center funded by the Republican Party's most notorious donor, Charles Koch. So, it's an academic center that gets money from the Koch brothers. Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard is one of 12 advisors of a foreign policy center at the Washington, D.C.-based Catholic University of America. The Center for the Study of Statesmanship was founded in 2017 with a $2.65 million grant from the Charles Koch Foundation, which gives tens of millions of dollars to American colleges and universities each year, usually to fund ideological free market academic programs. The position is not listed on Gabbard's 2017 financial disclosure, the most recent available. The center, which considers how American constitutionalism, with its emphasis on limited and decentralized power, virtue, and deliberation, relates to statesmanships in foreign and domestic affairs. Brings in professors and visiting fellows, sponsors conferences, seminars, and lectures. So, based on the nature of her positions, this is an organization she would likely be part of. She's qualified to be part of this. She handles foreign affairs. This is something she would likely be a part of. And because the Koch brothers have infected academia, they put some money into this organization. So, and that's not a good thing. I mean, the Koch brothers are despicable, and they have no business being in academia. But to use this to kind of draw a direct connection to Tulsi Gabbard, I'll say this. If articles came out connecting politicians' ties to every, whatever the organization be, if people in the media were as critical of every politician as they are of Tulsi Gabbard when it comes to stuff like this, man, people would be a lot more awake to stuff, because they would show you that Cory Booker has ties to Big Pharma, and he kneecapped Bernie Sanders' plan that would make prescription drugs cheaper. People would be talking about Kirsten Gillibrand's upcoming fundraiser with big pharma executives at Pfizer, who are going to have a fundraiser for them. People would be talking about how the Clintons are on the board at Walmart. People would be talking about, I mean, the list goes on. People would be talking about how Debbie Wasserman Schultz is involved with payday lending. And all these infractions I've mentioned are far more deeper and way more direct than this, for instance, of Tulsi Gabbard being on a board in an academic center whose mission statement is in line with the type of work Tulsi Gabbard does, and they get Koch money. Is it a good thing they get Koch money? Of course not. Of course not. But that's like saying NPR gets Koch money. So that's like saying everybody that works on This American Life is affiliated with the Koch brothers. Everybody that does anything on NPR is affiliated with the Koch brothers. Same thing. NPR gets Koch money. And it has it affected their programming? Yes. It certainly has. But does that mean that every single person that works, that they must be doing the Koch brothers bidding? It's not that direct of a connection. Hey, wait, don't tell me. It's all... The Koch brothers wrote all those jokes. The Koch brothers, unfortunately, have tentacles in a lot of different places. And in this case, it looks like they have tentacles in an academic center. And this person was desperate to write a smear piece on Tulsi Gabbard, and this was the best they could come up with. So let's see if there's more to this. Gabbard, a military veteran, has often opposed U.S. engagement in overseas conflicts, including war-torn Syria, so she is not out of place among anti-war interventionists. Anti-interventionists. I guess anti-war is not really. This is the important part. That's the important part right there. She's an anti-interventionist. The Koch brothers are not anti-interventionists. So when Tulsi Gabbard stops being an anti-interventionist, let me know. This article just acknowledged she's an anti-interventionist. But we're playing the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon with the Koch brothers, and we got something on Tulsi Gabbard. And Tulsi Gabbard is not perfect. She is deserving of criticism, just like everybody else. Just like Bernie, just like everybody else. But, I mean, because she is an anti-interventionist, because she is a peace candidate, because she has upset the establishment on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, she's also susceptible to a lot more smear pieces. Her and Bernie. They're the two actual progressives. They're going to get the most smear pieces. And that continues to be the case. And, here at this show, nobody gets a pass, but it's important to draw the distinction between just a very lazy smear piece and valid criticism. And there's been lazy criticisms of people that I don't like, and I'll acknowledge that. There was something that came out about Cory Booker. I'm not a fan of Cory Booker. But there was something that came out, and the big critique of him was that he's single. Is America ready for a single president? What was the headline? And who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? He's single? That's a reason to not like the guy? So, I'm just saying, I'll be fair. There are some really lazy criticisms out there of politicians that I'm not a fan of. And full disclaimer, I have given to 2 campaigns so far. I've given to Bernie Sanders and I've given to Tulsi Gabbard as an individual. I'm still kind of hoping they team up, because I think that if we don't have the strongest foot forward, progressives don't have a chance at the White House in 2020. I really think we gotta have the strongest progressive showing we've ever had to not only beat Trump, but also beat the Democratic establishment. And I actually think that the primary part, the Democratic establishment, is going to be the toughest thing to beat. So, all right. I don't think there's really much else to that article. So let's do some good news and some bad news. We'll do the bad news first. This is some pretty lame news. Bills criminalizing protests are being considered in states across the U.S. 8 different state legislators across the U.S. are simultaneously considering nearly identical new laws that will criminalize protests on property defined as critical infrastructure. The legal definition of critical infrastructure incorporates almost everything, serving as the backbone of the current economic system. The bills roll out severe criminal penalties for people who go onto oil and gas industry-owned property, which are defined as critical infrastructure under state law. If the bills pass into law, it will mean increasingly harsh enforcement mechanisms for prosecutors to use against people trying to protect their communities and families. Critics say the laws are designed to prevent pipeline protesters and others calling attention to corporate infrastructure destroying communities. Well, yeah, because when you're protesting a pipeline, where is the best place to be? Where the frickin' pipeline's gonna go. That's the best place to be. So they don't want you there. For a number of reasons. A, you disrupt their daily work, which is the whole point. And B, and when I say they, I mean the oil and gas industry. And B, if more people go and they look at those sites, more people are going to be like, holy fuck, and they're going to turn their cameras on, and they're going to tell people, and more people are going to know what this shit does to our land. I have been opposed to fracking since I knew what it was. And even before I saw the movie Gasland. You want to know why? Because I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time. I was a graduate student by day, and by night I was starting to make a little bit of money as a stand-up comedian, doing some road gigs in the area. I would drive on these back roads, and I would see these freaking fracking wells. And you just look at it, and you're like, holy shit, this is not safe. And I know that sounds a little elementary, and maybe it is, but have you ever seen one up close? Have you ever, you look at these, and then you do some reading. I didn't just see it, and I'm like, I can tell this is a boogeyman. I saw it, and I was like, this does not look okay. Then I did research and reading, and I saw the movie Gasland, and I did more research and more reading, and I did a media ecological study on the fracking industry in Pennsylvania, how they sponsor stuff and buy advertising to get favorable coverage, so they have 2,800 environmental regulations that go underreported by year. 2,800. Keep in mind, the EPA is little more than a slap on the wrist to begin with. The EPA is very soft and corrupt themselves. And even by their lax standards, 2,800 violations. So anyway, they don't want you on these properties. They don't want you near these properties. You might do what I did. You might see it and be like, what the fuck? And then you might do some more digging. So they don't want you on these properties. And by the way, how do you define, let's get back to the article for a second. How do you define critical infrastructure? And as the article says, that incorporates almost everything. Critical infrastructure is a street. A street is critical infrastructure. That's critical. If we don't have streets, we need streets to go places. That's critical infrastructure. A bridge is critical infrastructure. A sidewalk. How is that not critical? That's critical. We need a... What are you going to do without sidewalks? Yeah, this is not good legislation, obviously. All right, so here's the states considering this. Indiana, Illinois, Mississippi. Oh, interesting. The pipeline capitals, Pennsylvania, home of the Marcellus Shale, and North Dakota, home of Dakota Access. Wyoming, Idaho, Ohio, all started considering this corporate design legislation. Ohio, another issue with fracking. Mississippi, the Gulf. And I'm not directly familiar with Wyoming and Idaho. Well, I know there's some aquifers out there. So I'm pretty sure all of these states, I know at least for sure Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Ohio, they all have a lot of environmental issues when it comes to issues of pipelines and fracking. And I'm assuming that these other states have their issues too. And that's why these states in particular are looking at this legislation. So we'll keep an eye on this, see if it goes anywhere. But that is not good news. We'll do two more quick ones. This is a peculiar story. Then we're going to end with something a little more positive. Opium-addicted parrots keep raiding poppy farms in India. Poppy farmers are being forced to guard their crops against the drug-addled birds who get high off the narcotic effects of the plant. This is probably a really bad thing, but I don't know. I couldn't help but chuckle a little bit at the idea of parrots getting high. Bruh, stoned I am. Bruh, play the record backwards. Bruh, Pink Floyd. Bruh, John's my favorite Beatle. What else would high parrots say? Bruh, Toucan Sam's a hack, but I'm craving the cereal anyway. Bruh. Farmers in India are fighting tooth and nail to keep a scourge of opium-addicted parrots at bay. The birds have been causing opium-addicted parrots. It's going to be my next punk band, by the way. Who's in? The birds have been causing headaches for poppy cultivators in the state of Madhya Pradesh, NDTV reports, pillaging their crops and gorging themselves on the precious narcotic. And their daily raids are starting to have a significant impact on locals' livelihood, prompting many people to call on authorities for assistance in staving off the drug-addled birds. These high parrots, I tell ya, they're just getting high off the poppy. You know, I can't help but chuckle a little bit. High parrots. All right, let's see if there's anything else to this. We have tried making loud sounds and even used firecrackers to scare the birds. But it does not work. The only birds that are scared by the firecrackers are the paranoid birds. And not all of them have that side effect. If only all the birds could be paranoid, they'd be like, the fuzz is coming, man, let's bail, and they'd fly away. Maybe they should just use police sirens. Or maybe they should try to see if human stuff that would distract a high human will work. You know, like just have like a pizza sitting out, be like, hey, you want to be like, oh, there it is. It's the midnight feeding hour. All right, so high birds, they're going around. Interesting. All right, here's some good news to close out our week. In historic vote, Ohio City residents grant Lake Erie the legal rights of a person. So what's going on here? Tired of receiving notices warning that their drinking water may have been compromised and having little recourse to fight corporate polluters, voters in Toledo, Ohio on Tuesday approved a measure granting Lake Erie some of the same legal rights as a human being. 61% of voters in Tuesday's special election voted in favor of Lake Erie's Bill of Rights, which allows residents to take legal action against entities that violate the lake's rights to flourish and naturally evolve without interference. Toledoans, I'm assuming that's how you say it. Toledoans for Safe Water led a years-long campaign to convince voters that their city's charter must be amended to ensure that the environmental burden carried by the lake, which provides drinking water to 12 million Americans and Canadians, must be reduced. Beginning today with this historic vote, the people of Toledo and our allies are ushering in a new era of environmental rights by securing the rights of Great Lake Erie, said Marky Miller of Toledo Folks for Safe Water. Under the Bill of Rights, residents will now have legal standing in court to sue corporate polluters on behalf of Lake Erie and to seek damages which will be used to rid the lake of pollution. The initiative was modeled on rights to nature laws which have passed in Lafayette, Colorado by the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma and the Chippewa Nation in Minnesota, and countries including India and Nepal. So they began their campaign in 2016 in response to the drinking water crisis in the area 2 years earlier. 500,000 residents of the Toledo area were advised not to drink or use their tap water for 3 days due to a toxic algae. People need to start relying on our democracy to hold polluters accountable. That's awesome. What Toledo voters and other places working on rights of nature are hoping is to not only change laws, but to change culture. Tish Odell, an organizer with the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, which assisted the local campaigners, told The Progressive, "So much of our way of thinking about our relationship with nature has to change. We are not separate from nature, but part of nature. Nature is living, and that right to thrive, flourish, and be healthy needs to be recognized. Nature doesn't need us to survive, but we need nature to survive." Well said. Well said. And the big moral here is, you know where the power is? Locally. That's where the power is. The people of Toledo, they're going to have cleaner drinking water. They're going to hold the polluters accountable. Why? Because they rallied locally and they got legislation passed. And they had a coalition. They had a coalition of activists, of people, and they got this done. And that's how it happens. You know, when I was in Pittsburgh, I saw it in my community where my parents lived. There was a really progressive mayor who is sadly no longer with us. He got a big base together. He rallied some folks. They passed a drilling ban in the community. I sleep a little easier at night knowing that my parents don't have to worry about their drinking water. Well, I mean, they do, but not, you know what I mean. It could be a lot worse because there's a drilling ban in their community. So they don't have to worry about drilling going on in their community. That's nothing I have to worry about. And it's because of local action. Same with the city of Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh got a drilling ban as well. Why? Because the community rallied, forced the drilling ban. The mayor at the time didn't want it. The current mayor does, but the mayor at the time didn't want it. They got it through anyway. So, you know, the power is local, and we got to go local because that's the only way we can fight back. And when you go local and you really rally, you can beat big oil. Look at what Gail McLaughlin did in Richmond, California. Fuck that one up. Richmond, California. Both wonderful places. Richmond, California and Richmond, Virginia. Both really cool towns. But Richmond, California is the one we're talking about. So, I guess that's a positive way to sort of end the week. Go local, you guys. And good for Toledo. So let me see what you guys are saying. And that's how we'll end the show today. Paul, thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution. Paul says, thanks for your daily news. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for tuning in. It means everything. Anna, thank you very much for your Super Chat contribution. Scripts, clips, series, and flicks, thank you very much for your Super Chat contribution. Bernie keeps saying free and fair elections in Venezuela. Why doesn't he work that here? Fair question. Take vote purges and long voter lines in many states here. I like Bernie, but he needs to stop the qualifier with Venezuela. I agree. I wish he wouldn't do that too. And you know, it's so weird. I feel like to kind of speak to that, and you know, it's not just Bernie. I mean, I feel like everybody in office does it. I feel like there's this sort of stigma that when you are an elected official, no matter who you are, there's sort of this stigma that you have to take the kind of pro-USA narrative to some degree. And it's sort of like Like, the way I look at it, it's like when somebody has a car, like if someone's a car salesman, for instance, like just as a for instance, you know, you're not going to go to a Kia dealership and have a car salesperson tell you that the Honda Civic is a better car. If you're just like, hey, the Honda Civic's a better car, right? They're not going to say yes. What they will say is, well, the Kia offers a very affordable and incredibly great value, and it actually has gas mileage very comparable to other cars in its class, and, you know, whatever. And I'm not, you know, saying Kias are bad cars or whatever. I'm just pulling this out of my butt. But what I mean is, similarly, an elected official, they're not going to straight up say, yeah, this is fucked up or that's fucked. They're going to kind of dress it up a little bit. I'm not saying I like that. I'm just saying that's the reality. Scripts, Clips, Series, and Flicks also says, celebrating my birthday Sunday. Happy birthday. We won't be on until Monday, so I'm wishing you a happy birthday now. We'll drop you a large if you can guess how old I'm going to be. I am guessing you are going to be 37. That's my guess. Ron, say every number between 18 and 99. No. I'm going to guess, yeah. I'm guessing 37. Melissa guesses 32. Herman, will you have Lee Carter of Virginia? I would love to have Lee Carter. And I've, you know, I don't know if you guys remember, but we came up with gingers. Gingers for internet neutrality, and I forget what the rest of it is. But yeah, it was like gigabytes, internet. There was something about it. But anyway, he's been very outspoken for municipal broadband and net neutrality. So I told him we got to get together. You know, gingers for net neutrality, gingers for municipal broadband. Yeah. Free elections in Venezuela. 75% of the population actually votes in Venezuela. A portion of the public decided to boycott the vote. If you do the math, 5 million people stayed home. Joseph, actually, quick correction to what you said earlier. Koch brothers are anti-war. They've been supportive of Khanna's Yemen bill. I'm thrilled to hear that. I did not know that they were supportive of Ro Khanna's Yemen bill, and I'm glad to hear that. Does that paint them as anti-war overall? I would still say no. I think if resources are involved and if it suits big oil's interests, you would not see the Koch brothers protesting that war very much. Gingers for gigabytes. Yeah, we'll just go with that. Let's have free, fair, and open elections in America. Yeah, I'm with you. That'd be nice. But yeah, that's interesting that the Koch brothers, I did not know that about the Koch brothers, and I am glad to hear that. They're still despicable overall, but but it's good that they got one thing right. Although I don't know if that's fair to say they are anti-war as a whole. In this particular, for instance, it sounds like they got it right, but I don't think it's fair to say they're anti-war overall. Koch has the only true oil refinery. I dropped on me. All right, sorry, I lost that. So here's a hint. Had a pet as a child we called Mr. T. Had to let him go because he kept eating the neighbors. Probably older than your dad, says Scripts, Clips, Series, and Flicks. All right, I'll do one more guess. And you don't have to get me. You don't have to give me anything if I get it right. Would you go on the Joe Rogan show if he invited you? Of course I would. It's the biggest podcast in the world. Yes, of course I would. I wish he would invite me. And hey, I know some of you have mentioned that before. Please feel free to tweet Joe Rogan. Tell him I'd love to come on the show. All right, I'm going to say Scripts, Clips. I'm going to say 64. Because I always got the Beatles on my mind. I'm going to say 64. So is it 64? Fake Donald Trump says he's been 27 since 33. Love it. Thank you. So let's see if you're 64. Andrew said, I'm almost Kurt Cobain's age when he died. He died so young. He did. He was 27 years old. And, man, it's crazy to think he was that young, especially since I'm past that now. Well, I've been 27 for a long time, but, it'd be so interesting if that guy was still here. I'm a big Nirvana fan. I talk about it. We've talked about Nirvana on many Music Monday. But yeah. Go on Joey Diaz. He's more Bernie friendly and he's Joe's friend. I would love to go on any of those. I would love to go on any of those. Thank you, Rick. Very kind of you. Shannon, I'm turning 30 next month. That's awesome. That's really cool. Musco, I'll be 40 in March. I've been 27 since 33, so I don't, Good show, Ron, says Daniel. 52 is the age Kurt would be if he were alive now. That's, yeah. It's crazy to think about. That makes me feel old. Guys, we are out of time. Thank you so much for being part of this. This has been Get Your News On with Ron. Some tour dates coming up. Me and Graham Elwood are going to be in the Gulf in March. Get your tickets. We're going to be in Oxford, Mississippi. We're going to be in Lafayette, Louisiana. We're going to be in Pensacola, Florida. We're going to be in New Orleans, Louisiana. April, we're going to be in Texas, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Fort Worth. May, we're going to be in Salt Lake and Boise. June, we're going to be on the East Coast. Get those tickets at ronplacone.com. I'll be in Indianapolis May 1st. Tickets at ronplacone.com. And first house show is happening in Boulder Creek, California, April 19th. Email me if you're in the area and want to attend that show. If you can support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/ronplacone for a give what you can level. You get all kinds of exclusive content, including my album, including full stand-up sets, including dialogues with my cat Lucy, and you help keep this show on the air. We are out of time. Thank you for an amazing week. The podcast drops tomorrow. Check out the Get Your News On with Ron podcast. If you missed anything this week, we do a nice summary of what we talk about throughout the week. So we start with Music Monday. We end with Thursday. So please do check out the podcast. You can get it wherever you get podcasts. It's just Get Your News On with Ron. Thank you guys for being part of this. Have a wonderful weekend.